Hi everyone, my name is Patrick, this is Jenny, Lucas, as well as Jeremy, and we are Leading Edge Consulting. I'm glad that we found the time today to meet with your organization and talk about the issues that are pertinent. Of course, this is a massive issue. It's clearly affected all of us as we are from the Winnipeg area, within the Winnipeg community. That's why we spend so much time really figuring out the best strategic path for your organization to take on how to solve the issues that are occurring and what is the best strategic path for the Boys and Girls Club of Winnipeg. So, what is your mission statement? What do you value? Your organization is trying to provide a safe and supportive space where children and youth can experience new opportunities, overcome barriers, build positive relationships, and develop confidence and skills for life. Now, let me ask you, when you were growing up, having those role models, having that positive environment, having all of these positive things in your life, that is what made you who you are today, is it not? So, it makes sense for others to want that. And that is what your organization is trying to do. You want to make sure that everybody within the community has the ability to go to a place where they can overcome those barriers in their lives, and they can build positive relationships, and they can develop the confidence and those skills for their lives going forward. So what is happening right now? The issue is that your organization is seeing a rising dropout rate within the club, the Boys and Girls Club of Winnipeg. Now obviously that's not good. That means that these youth are not having the opportunity to build the foundation that I mentioned earlier. In 2016, over 3,000 kids and youth came through your organization's doors. In 2012, that number was 4,100. That's a 28% dropout rate. Why? Jenny's going to talk about the ARROWS model, the solution, and how we can solve that 28% dropout rate going forward in the future.
All right, so we're working with the community of Winnipeg right now. We know that in Winnipeg we have a high Indigenous population, which are disproportionately represented in incarceration rates, with poverty, basically all the bad things. However, there is a solution. The ARROWS model that we're going to discuss and implement with your organization actually is coming from an Indigenous organization. So it's a fantastic model that can be applied to, that is relevant for any kind of youth activity. So with what Nadinaway did was, a lot of other not-for-profit people were realizing, like, hey, this organization is doing really well. They have high youth engagement, the youth are staying there, they're implementing their programs well, the youth are having a better quality of life, like what's going on here. So Nadinaway really took a look at their processes and what they were doing right, and they developed the ARROWS model. So this is an acronym. What we're going to go into is A is for accessibility, R is resources, another R is relationships, O for opportunities, W for welcome, and S for support. So accessibility, how do we use this ARROWS model in your current programming? So A, accessibility. Is your program accessible? Can these youth get to where your programming is? Are there any barriers? Are they hungry when they arrive at your programming? Do they have enough transportation to get there? Is it easy for them to access your program? R for resources. So do we have these resources to give to the youth when they arrive at our program? Do we have enough capital? Do we have enough funds to give them the bus tickets, to give them the food? And the biggest one I think that we really want to hone in on is the relationships. So a lot of the youth in your organization are leaving, so they're walking through the door, but they're not engaged. So what's happening with your staff? How are these relationships being built with these youth? So that's something that the ARROWS model addresses. O for opportunities. So once these youth, we give them all these wonderful skills and everything, but where does it go? So opportunities, we want to focus on being able to present the youth with opportunities, to present these linkages, so so that they can use the new skills that you teach them in the real world and welcoming environment. Are we using the right language for these youth? Are we culturally sensitive? Are we sensitive to their gender, to their sexuality? These are all issues that youth are facing every single day. And we want to make sure that the environment that we bring these kids into, these youth, they're welcoming and that they feel safe there. And finally, S is support. So how are we going to support them through this transition? And once they've transitioned and become these wonderful people, how are we supporting that, keeping that continuity of keeping that cycle going, that good cycle going through? So thank you very much. I'm going to hand it off to Lucas, and we're going to look at these and actually solve it. We're going to actually apply the Arrows model to your main problem of participation.
Okay, so let's talk about accessibility. So the main problem your organization is trying to solve is childhood poverty. So when these youth are coming to our events, are they hungry? Do they have they had proper access to food that day? Do they have transportation to get to these events? Is the locations, are they spread out through the city enough for them to easily access them? And do we have proper supplies to build on our programming and ensure that these programs keep going? So we would like you to look at food availability. So when youth come into your drop-in centers, there is food available for them at all times, snacks, and also we would like to recommend that you offer them free public transit, so free bus passes and things like that, so that they could, or carpooling, so that they were able to get to these events. We also looked at your multiple locations, and we've seen that you have 11 locations in the Winnipeg area, so we think that's great. And so you're doing a great job there. Next, let's talk about resources. So, a problem which you're facing is a lack of funding. So how can we get sustainable funding and increase it? Okay. Your hours and your staff. Are these buildings, these drop-in centers, open and available to the youth when they're in times of need, or are the times convenient for them to go to these centers? And the infrastructure size. Do you have the facilities capable of housing a large amount of youth and putting on different activities for them? So, when it comes to, we would like to recommend for you to promote more successful programs and host more events. We took a look at your 100-mile dinner, and we thought that was amazing. You sold tickets for $135 a pop, and you sold out that event. That was great. We'd recommend that you do more events because it looks like to us that all of yours are selling out. So there's interest in more. We'd also recommend for you to incorporate a 24-hour safe space so that youth can come in at all hours and drop in, and just a place where they are safe and respected. We're also looking at how you could prevent or rent additional facilities in different areas of the city, such as Elmwood, North End, North Point Douglas, things like that. So when you have larger events, do we have the facilities to house them?
Relationships. So this is another critical area that we need to look at developing. We're having potentially an issue that your organization is facing is internal screening and the availability of role models. So our solution for that is in your initial screening, are you screening employees that want to do this youth work, that are in it for the right reasons, that want to improve the quality of life of youth and are enthusiastic about it as well? We want to have your current employees to have access to engaging leaders. Are they learning from the appropriate people, leaders in the community, people at the grassroots level? So that's another solution that we need to make with staff. And then also from a business aspect, your organization, I believe, needs to work on a set of core values. So what are these values? Integrity, honesty, accountability. We need to develop those core business values so that you're able to exhibit that to the youth. Basically, when you're building relationships, they need to be built on a foundation of trust and mutual understanding, mutual respect, And basically, when you walk you have to walk the walk, essentially, is what we're looking at with relationships.
5 minutes.
Bonjour, and Dinaway Maganaduk. Hello, all my relations. Jeremy Rapstead and Dijnakas. That's Anishinaabe language, which is spoken on Treaty 1 territory in Winnipeg. Now, this creates an opportunity for people to feel comfortable in these spaces. And that's part of what Boys and Girls Clubs of Winnipeg wants to do. Now, the problem is just like I did 2 minutes ago in the presentation, there's the inability to apply the language skills that isn't necessarily offered through Boys and Girls Club of Winnipeg into real life, but they offer other opportunities for people to develop their own character. The other problem is it might not just be the fact that they don't have the opportunities to apply these life skills, but the staff don't understand where can I send these kids to grow. You know, it's just one of those issues that your organization really needs to address to perhaps turn around this decreased involvement rate in your program. Part of the solutions was we were thinking, in this age of technology, you can't always create community spaces in a physical location. So rather than Googling, where you could use these learned skills in the real world, what we're going to do is we're going to set up a user-friendly library within the. Oh, it's a lot of pennies, man. We suggest your organization sets up a user-friendly library for your youth to utilize when they want to use these life skills in the real world. Next, we want to look at we want you to look at previous users of your programming. Essentially, what happens when they phase out of the programming? Are they interested in perhaps paying it forward? Or do they want to get more involved? So we want to suggest job opportunities and maybe even perhaps volunteer opportunities within the organization where they can get involved in this community we're trying to create. We are suggesting you guys create around your program. And that leads us into program awareness, which is essentially a lot of people perhaps don't understand that, when you get an intro course to something, maybe you can evolve into somewhere else. So essentially, we want you to create a space in which people can develop their skills, as well as find out which programs they can take them to the next level. Now, another problem is when people enter a space, we want you to make sure that they feel welcome. So in order to feel welcome, you want to make sure that the people on the front end have an ability to relate to the staff. We also want to make sure there's an unsafe environment that's prevented. And the way that we're going to do that is by providing we are suggesting that you get Boys and Girls Club of Winnipeg, get ongoing training for your staff. Things like sensitivity training, cultural training, just to create information so people know. Finally, we want to make sure there's a code of conduct that's clearly defined in all the operations of your organization. And then to end it off, we want you to make sure that youth escalations are handled to create this safe environment. Say a friend of yours says something that you don't really feel comfortable or puts you in an awkward situation. We suggest that you create a program for these youth escalation situations.
Thank you, Jeremy. Finally, there's support. Now, currently within your organization, there's a lack of continued support. Youth will go through the program, they'll develop these fundamentals, and it'll be phenomenal. However, perhaps they can go off the rails. Perhaps there can be difficulties in their lives where they're triggered and there's issues that arise. And so that's something that we would like to recommend for you as an organization to prevent. It's very, very important that we continue that ongoing character development for these individuals so that regardless of those triggering events that can cause misfortunes, they're taken care of. That is exactly what the solution is. In Calgary, we saw a model where mentors were partnered with mentees. Exactly correct. Finally, our recommendation is to implement that ARROS
Stop.
model. And we'll open the floor to Q&A.
Very close,
Is
very.
that 15 minutes?
What
Oh, I
a,
didn't see the warning.
yeah, what a fucking improvement.
Yeah.